Have a moderator today, or should I just proceed?
Yeah, you can just proceed. Thank you. Recording started.
All right, thank you very much. So welcome yet to another session, guys. Thank you very much for having me today. I still remain my humble self, Haladu Abdullahi. As I introduced myself, I think last week or two from my previous session, I'm an expert and a specialist in Microsoft Azure, both infrastructure and security. I'm currently a Microsoft Cloud engineer with Anode Media, and I'm happy to join you once again for another yet interactive session, and hopefully we'll have some key takeaways today, and we'll be able to learn as every day. So today we'll be going through how to manage user authentication. Yeah, we have been talking about users, groups, service principals, a lot of identities. So today we want to understand how to manage these identities elements within Microsoft Entra ID or Microsoft Entra ID's admin space. So we know authentication has one of the 4 key security pillars, especially in access control. So we already know what authentication is, even though I will still explain more on what authentication is. But today we are about to understand how to implement authentication within Microsoft Entra ID or Microsoft Cloud Space, and what are the possible or supported authentication methods within this Entra ID. That's what we'll be going through, and that's bringing us to our agenda for today. We'll be going through to understand, okay, the fundamentals of authentication, which I already started explaining. And then authentication methods such as passwordless, password-based authentications, passwordless authentications such as the Windows Hello, FIDO2. FIDO stands for Fast Identity Online. It says identity, don't worry, we'll come to that, but it's an open authentication identity, which I think the newest version is the FIDO2 specification. We'll also be understanding how to set up Authenticator app, that is for authentication. Microsoft has its own Authenticator app where we use to verify who we are, or verify from the token, either the push token or the push notification we get. So we'll see how to set that up today as well, or how it is being set up. We'll also understand how Windows Hello for Business is set up, or how it contributes or reinforces our security, especially for Windows device users or for the supported device, but mostly Windows device. We'll also be understanding self-service password reset. We have been speaking about this throughout this bootcamp. So today we'll see how to set that up. If you already know how to do it, well done. We'll still go through it again. That's SSPR. We'll still go through password protection and smart lockouts. Yes, we'll have to understand how to set password complexity, password expiration, or password lifetime policies. And smart lockout is a capability of Microsoft Entra ID that comes as a default. But if you have a license that allows you to set a customized lockout policy or lockout threshold, we'll see how to set that up as well based on our license. That is the Entra ID license, either P1 or P2, which is required for most of these features. We'll also be discussing Kerberos, I think, briefly, because this is a beginner bootcamp. If we try to discuss Kerberos as a hybrid authentication method in detail, we will not be able to make use of the time today. The same as certificate-based authentications, which is, I think, mostly for Windows and RAID use. Well, we just speak that briefly. We don't need to discuss that in detail. We just have to understand it so that when you come across it next time, you understand what they're talking about, that kind of authentication method. Yeah, we'll also be discussing VM. I don't know if time will permit us, but if time permits us, we'll also be discussing VM authentication and how to configure that within the Azure portal. You have a virtual machine. Now you don't want to use local admin account or local accounts to be logging in or having access to those machines. Now you want to utilize Entra ID. You want to utilize your Entra ID users to be able to access your machines that are on Azure. Yeah, so you can set that up as well. I think it's a very quick way to set up, but we'll see if we have enough time to do that. Unless, because if you didn't set it up at the beginning of spinning up the machine, it won't. I don't think it will allow you to join it to the Microsoft Entra ID. We'll see about that. Then we'll have the exercise. That is the hands-on. I think we have 2 hands-on labs, and then we have a question and answer. Last time, I think you guys were not interactive, so maybe this time around I'll allow, maybe when I'm done with some certain topics or within some certain threshold we have achieved, I will allow some questions so that your question doesn't just take a breather and die out with you. So what are our learning objectives? As I mentioned from the agenda, will be administering authentication method such as passwordless, and FIDO2 is one of the passwordless authentication method. When we say passwordless, we didn't mean that there's no password, but actually, yeah, you have configured some kind of authentication elements whereby in the subsequent authentication or sign-in, you are not being triggered or asked for you to supply your password again, which leads to password fatigue or some brute force attack. That eliminates brute force attack. So, but you will have to supply some sort of PIN or some sort of biometrics. That is what passwordless and FIDO authentication method is all about. We'll discuss that in detail when we get to that. We'll also be seeing how to implement Windows Hello for Business. We'll also be configuring and deploying self-service password reset, which is SSPR. We'll also be deploying and see how to manage or set up password protection policies, how to configure smart local thresholds and counters, and how to reset the counters or customize your settings on the smart lockout so that you don't get to lock yourself out, and some best practices recommended by Microsoft on how to configure your custom smart lockout for both hybrid identities and cloud-based identities. Caberos, I already mentioned about that. We'll just discuss that briefly because really it's a very complicated and hybrid setup, which means you have some identity on-premise and you have hybrid setup with, of those identities on-premise to your cloud Entra ID. Then you may want to configure Caberos. That means you need some servers that will be running the agents. So we'll just discuss that briefly. You understand the concepts, and we won't be able to implement this because it's a very complicated setup, and I don't think we have the infrastructure to implement that yet here on this bootcamp. We'll also see if we have enough time to configure authentication for virtual machines, both Windows and Linux, but virtual machines on the cloud on your Azure portal. So let's begin. I don't know if this session has okay, it has been thank you, Emmanuel, for starting the record. So what is authentication? Like I said, we have been discussing authentication as one of the pillars of security access control. Authentication, authorization, audits, and I think administration was the fourth one. But today we'll be focusing on user authentication. That is one of the identities, authentication. And we know authentication is the process in which you verify or you verify or validate who you are. You have to validate, yes, you are what you claim to be. So a user identity in your Entra ID, you have a user identity, and that user identity is trying to access a resources or trying to access a service application. And that application is now requiring for authentication, that is login, verify who you are. Now, there are various methods of authentication, meaning various methods in which you need to verify who you are, but you need to enable them within the Microsoft Cloud. You need to enable such authentication as an admin, meaning your global admin, your tenant global admin, or your Entra ID global admin needs to select or needs to configure which type of authentication methods is required for your organization. Maybe this is designed based on your organizational security policy, or maybe just based on the highest security policy therein. But I think it's best if you are following your organizational security policy that is documented, and you are following the best industry recommended security authentication method. We'll see which ones are the recommended or best with higher security. I think within the documentation I shared on the chat, you will see when you go through the document, you realize that Microsoft has always recommend and advocate for the higher security policy, especially the passwordless, which are the most secured one. And Microsoft always recommend you configure MFA or conditional access policies for your authentication methods. What these two policies or methods do ensure is they ensure that every time someone trying to access your application or your services within your tenant that are integrated to your Entra ID, it will enforce that authentication method that must be followed, meaning someone cannot choose an authentication method you did not enable or you did not configure, or maybe the ones that you deem are less secured. So that's what we'll be looking at. So authentication, as I said, is a process where you verify who you are, or you verify your identity so that you can be granted access to an application or to a service or to a resource. Maybe you want to collaborate, you want to access Teams, and it will now require you to authenticate. You want to access document, you want to access application. As long as it requires for your password, username, or PIN, or biometrics, that is an authentication method, and it has been configured by the admin or the global admin within your tenant. There are various or multiple authentication methods. In some cases, some organization will set up multiple authentication steps. It may not be beyond 2 or 3, but most of the time it's just 2. And that is configured within the Microsoft Entra ID as well, meaning you just don't need to supply gone are the days you only supply password and username, maybe username and password, which has now been a subject or vulnerable to brute force attack, man-in-the-middle attack, and then some exfiltration methods that tends to crack your password, or maybe simpler password that have been easy to crack or within the dictionary attack. So, but if you set up some high security authentication methods, which are resistance to brute force attack and resistance to phishing techniques, that is what is most secure and highly secured and most recommended authentication method, and we'll be discussing them more here. So what are the various or multiple authentication methods we have? The ones that are supported and the ones that are available within the Entra ID. For the duration of the time you have been having yourself more conversant with the Entra ID portal or within the Microsoft Cloud space throughout this bootcamp, let me use the bootcamp duration as an example. You have been seeing, yes, authentication, and I believe you, under the authentication methods blade in the Entra ID Admin Center, you should have seen some authentication methods supported, such as the SMS authentication method, email authentication method. Those are the default ones, and they have been legacy ones. And Microsoft has been advocating that organizations should move away from such legacy authentication methods because they are less secure compared to the new modern or recommended authentication method, which I said, this modern authentication methods, they are been verified to be resistant to phishing attack and resistant to brute force attack as well. So that's why Microsoft is recommending that. So it is understood that the previous authentication methods are mostly password-based authentication, where you are prompted for your password and username, and you just supply that, and boom, you get in. But if someone can guess or can brute force your password, and trust me, we all know we are guilty of trying to have a password that we can remember. Some of us use passwords that are guessable, meaning password that someone can guess. Someone close to you can guess it. Someone far away can just find information about you, and he knows that maybe you are using your birthday for your password. You are using your son's name for your password. You are using the city you are living as a password, and just adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the end. So those are really vulnerable authentication methods. So that's why passwordless comes in, and a lot of organizations and features came into play, such as the FIDO, the Windows Hello, and I think the Microsoft Authenticator app is also one of them. But sometimes Microsoft just tends to separate that from the passwordless, but it's passwordless because when you supply the password or whatever, then it prompts you to supply the one-time token authentication token, or a push notification is sent to you with a code and you verify the code. Now, authentication method I mentioned is there, but Microsoft Authentication app is not the only authentication method out there. Google has authentication method, and I think other third-party security services also had their own authentication app. Most of them have it, most of them. So another authentication method is the open authentication tokens, mostly used by application. I think you don't interfere in that. It's mostly used by application or the Microsoft Graph. In the Microsoft Graph, mostly used in automations. And then the certificate-based and cabarrus authentication, which utilize the Windows-based authentication and some tokens and tickets. Cabarrus tickets is being utilized. Mostly in this, you have to configure a server where you install the cabarrus agent there. And the cabarrus agent will now be the one interfacing with the application proxy. Mostly it's used to access on-premise application. But we'll discuss that when we reach where we're discussing cabarrus and certificate-based authentications. So, password authentication. As I just said earlier, password authentication is nothing more than authentication method that does not, in the subsequent authentication, it does not prompt you to supply your password and username. It has already remembered something about you. It just wants you to supply a PIN that you set up at the beginning to verify it is you. For example, most of us that have Windows operating system, laptop, let me use laptop, our personal devices, especially our mobile phones or laptop, we tend to log into those devices with our PIN. Yes, with only a PIN. In fact, my phone, I access my phone with my face, like that's a biometrics. Some of us access our phone with our fingerprint, which is another form of biometrics. And this form of biometrics are being captured in digital, are converted. Your fingerprint, your face is digitized and stored as a key, as a hash key. And that hash is being stored on your device. It is not sent to anywhere remotely or stored by a server somewhere. No, it's stored and locally to that device. Meaning these are form of authentication that utilize a key, but those keys are stored in a container within the device, within the mobile phone or within the laptop, so that in your subsequent login, when you supply that same key, when you supply that same biometrics, it will now digitize that biometrics and then compare with what is being stored in the device container, in the security device container within your device. It could compare the hashes. Once the hashes are the same, then it allows you into your device. That is just the simple way I can put the flow. It's a complicated flow down in your device, but it happens very quick because your processor is processing that in milliseconds. You can see the wonders of the ICs and processors of the modern devices, but truly it's a very complicated process going down there, all the hashing, digitizing your biometrics. And in some cases, it's your iris, but that is really complicated and sometimes it's so intrusive on human biology that I think you only find that in sophisticated secure facilities that you have to use your eyelid, your iris for authentication. But it's another form of passwordless authentication or authentication method using your iris, but they're all classified under biometrics. So, like I said, FIDO is one of them. FIDO is incorporated by Microsoft within the Windows Hello, but it's mostly configured on your device. There's no way, I don't know, because I'm sharing my screen, I won't be able to show you, but I know some of us already have it, and I made a simpler example. I said an example with your mobile device, which I believe most of us are accessing our device now with either with our face scan or with our fingerprint. Few of us are using PIN to access it, but I still configure I enable two authentication, both my PIN and a face. I disable the fingerprint because I realized someone can use my fingerprint when I'm sleeping to open my device, but it's left for you if you are comfortable with whatever biometrics. All authentication methods, including biometrics one, they have their own cons and pros. None of them is 100% resistance to any form of social security attacks. Yeah, social. What I mean by social is someone interacting with you, someone close to you, someone as having close proximity to your device. That's social. So those are still vulnerable to proximity attacks. So that is what passwordless authentication is all about. And these are the example of passwordless authentication. As I mentioned, Windows Hello is what we configured on our Windows devices. We configure some biometrics, maybe our fingerprints, maybe our face at the point of configuring it. But mind you, you have to enable that authentication method in your Entra ID. And we'll see how to enable passwordless authentication such as FIDO in our device. All you need is to toggle it, and that all your accounts or the accounts that you, or groups of accounts or users that you enable that as a test bed will now be enforced when they want to access their device, and it will now trigger a single sign-on, meaning once I log into my laptop with my fingerprint or with my facial identification, then when I try to access any application or any services or devices or any resource within my Entra ID that's integrated to my Entra ID, it doesn't prompt me to supply my password again. That is single sign-on, meaning the first login I did to that device has already given me an express access to all services and applications that I have on that device because single sign-on is already enabled. That is all about eliminating all the fatigue you go through with password accessing your services, application, and resources. So, so how do we administer, meaning how do you configure as an admin, how do you configure FIDO? That is the Fast Identity Online Specification 2, which has been designed by the Open Specification, Open Security Specification. I think that should be the name of the organization or community that designed this feature of security for password authentication. But so Microsoft Entra ID supported this, and like I said, you need to enforce it, meaning you need to enable it before it will be prompted for your users or for the group of users that you enable that. You can select some group of users that you feel that they need high security within your organization, or you can enable it on all your user base in your organization. But mind you, don't lock people out by enabling it because you need to review your organization. Does the organization meet up with those requirements for FIDO or for password? Does all your organization staff have their device being supportive or being devices that meet up with that requirement? Because not all devices meet up the passwordless. Yeah, trust me. Not all mobile devices, not all laptops meet up with those this requirement for FIDO or password authentication. Therefore, you need to be mindful of those requirements being met for those users before you enable it for all users or for some group of users, that targeted users. So you need to make sure the requirement is there, meaning the device is supporting FIDO. It's a device that supports FIDO, such as Windows 11, Windows 10, 18, mini version 1809, and Windows and later versions as well support FIDO and Windows Hello. Windows 11, all versions of Windows 11 support Windows Hello or FIDO, and yeah, those are the versions. Windows Server 2019 for servers, it does support Windows Hello and FIDO as well. So you can assign it to all users or to some selected groups or to certain specific users. You don't need to put all the users in group, but it's better when you are assigning this, you select a group so that when you remove the user, you don't need to go and remove automatically remove him from that group. Or when the user is disabled or removed, when the user account is now decommissioned, it automatically removes that user account from the group. And when a new user joins at onboarding stage, you don't need to manually add him. At the point of creating that user, you just add that user. At the point of creating that user account, you just add that user automatically to that group, and boom, the user is, once the user is provisioned, the user is automatically as being part of that policy of passwordless. So when the user tries to log in, at the first prompt of logging in his device to start working, is going to be prompted to configure his Windows Hello or FIDO requirements, which is the biometrics. And subsequently later, all he needs to do is supply his PIN, 6-digit PIN or 4-digit PIN, depending on the requirement you set or that has been set. Then he gets in to the device and single sign-on will take over. He doesn't need to start supplying password and username because that has already been configured and stored locally on the device. And mind you, most of this, like I said, they are bound to the device that you set it up. So before we discuss Microsoft Authentication app, any questions so far regarding the passwordless authentication methods that we discussed? No question? Okay. I hope I'm audible. Since no one is complaining, I believe I'm audible. But if there's no questions,
yes, you are very audible. We are hearing you, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So since there's no question, I believe my explanations have been clear and basic on the levels for you to understand. So thank you. I don't know if to be happy or not, but if you don't have question, I have faith that you are understanding what I'm saying. So let's discuss authentication app. It has become very common, and because, like I said, it has been tested and verified to be really, it's really highly secured, and it eliminates, like I said, it eliminates brute force attack because it supports MFA. Because it's part of MFA, that is multi-factor authentication, because it's like it added an extra layer of security during authentication. The traditional or legacy way of authentication, like I said, is password-based, where I want to log into my Facebook account, to my Google email, to my newsletters that I read every morning. But what that device, hello? Hello? Someone speaking? Okay, please keep your mic mute, please. So, but those applications mostly, like I said, are vulnerable to. Can you please, guys, keep your mic when you're joining? Keep your mic mute, please, so that we don't interfere with the session. So most of these password-based authentication are subject to brute force attack, and that's why there was a need for extra layer of security during authentication, and that leads to different sort of authentication methods, such as the passwordless, and the authentication app came into play as well. So the authentication app came into play. It came into play because it also added an extra layer of security, in a sense that you are not only asked for password and username or email, you are also asked now to supply a token, a one-time token, either from a hardware given to you or from a software that generates that token every second or every reset. It has a reset timer, but the third-party organization that configure that authentication software will not tell you their reset timer or their regeneration counter, because that is a secret. Because if your regeneration counter is known by the threat actors, they will be able to set a script that will now beat or yeah, that will not beat your regeneration counter, right? I'm not saying that it is not subject to attacks or some sort of vulnerabilities, but let's call them 0-day vulnerability for now because they are not. It is not yet. It's not yet known by either the manufacturer, that is the OEMs, or by the general public. So if a vulnerability is not yet discovered by the general public or by the designer of that product, then it is considered as a 0-day vulnerability that is under exploits by the threat actors, but they are not yet announcing until the product designer finds out about it. So we're still talking about Authenticator app. Like I said, Microsoft Authenticator app is not the only Authenticator app out there. Other service providers or cloud service providers or security providers, they also have Authenticator app. I am trying to remember most of them, but only Microsoft and Google comes into my mind. But I know I used one for. Oh my God, I've forgotten the name of the organization, but they provide VPN for services. And there are many other authenticator services, application for other organizations. Even banks provide authenticator apps. Yeah, some banks provide hardware token for you for the authentication. Some banks just provide the software app for you to download. So whichever one you're going with, as long as the software or the hardware is generating an authentication token for you, then that is what we're talking about here. It's an extra, because it added extra layer of verification that it is you. That authenticator is tied to your user account. Whoever has set up authenticator will realize that you have to now scan a QR code before. That QR code now is tied to your account. For example, if my last session we added Oyimafu's account, I'll show you how to set up authenticator. I believe for those that doesn't know how to do it or have not done it, we'll see if I think it should be the first thing we do in our first hands-on lab. Should be the first hands-on lab. If it was not, then it should be in the SSPR. That is in the self-password reset session. We'll be doing that. So, but this authenticator app, you need to register it, and it has to be enabled as an authentication method by your admin. If it is not enabled for your user or for the tenant, you won't be able to use it. You have to go with the default one, which is I think SMS, phone call, and the email. Those are the default ones. Like I said, those are subject to, they are vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attack or brute force or phishing attacks. Someone can impersonate as you and intercept those information and use it to authenticate. So that's why the authenticator are coming into play, because someone cannot intercept your authentication. For now, it is not known how someone can intercept your token that has been generated. Even you yourself, you don't know the next code or 6-digit code that's going to be generated by the token. So unless someone has a way around to hack your device or hack the application, there's no way they'll be able to know your 6-digit. That's why you see scammers calling you, asking you to supply them the 6-digit code that will be sent to you. And once you give them that, they have access. It times out within some few seconds. It doesn't take a minute, but it times out within a few seconds. So then it generates a new one. So that's about Authenticator app. Like I said, it needs to be registered, and within the Microsoft Entra ID Admin Center, there's a analytics where we can see the usage, how many users are using it, or how many percentage of your user base are using it, and there's an audit trail. That's what I'm trying to say. There's an audit logs for you to see, and in fact, even a metrics to see the number of users using it and the number of users that are not using it. And you can now enable it for those users that are not using it, or start a campaign for those users that are not using it to encourage them to register for it or to enable it. Even though they are registered for it, they need to enable it. Even if you enable it for them, they need to register the authentication method on their device. If they don't, that's how it they keep skipping it, using the most convenient one for them. So Windows Hello for Business. Like I said, it's one of the passwordless authentication method, but it's mostly supported on Windows devices. And I mentioned the devices that supported this, the devices operating system that are currently supporting it, which is Windows 10, mini version 18.09, and later versions, that is higher version than 18.09 for Windows 10. And Windows 11, all versions of Windows 11 support that. We support Windows Hello for Business. And Windows Server 2019 version, I can't remember the mini version for Windows 19. No, Data Center. Windows Server 2019 Data Center. That means standard and basics. I don't think Windows 2019 have basic or home edition, but it has standard edition. So standard edition of Windows 19 does not support Windows Hello. Only Data Center edition does support Windows Hello. Now, what is Windows Hello for Business? It's another passwordless configuration authentication method where at the first prompt in, you configure a biometrics and PIN on the device, and it is now bound to that device. It is stored in a security container within the device, and it is only bounded to this device. It is not transferable to another device within the organization or outside the organization. It's only bounded to this device. If you need another device to have it, you need to configure it the same on another device, on the different device, or on the second device. So it combines a biometrics and PIN that are now bound to your account, your Entra ID account on that device. And it is a very strong authentication method because it is tied to your device, but it's strong because it has added that extra layer of authentication where you need to supply something you have or something you know. And we know biometrics is what we have, or something that, yeah, it's something we have, and nobody can replicate your fingerprint unless it's your tuning, or someone stole the fingerprint from a cop or from any instrument that can keep your fingerprint and be collected. We know we all watch CSI Forensic, where your fingerprint can be collected in various methods. So you can see another pros of biometrics authentication, right? If you are the type that goes to the restaurant or eatery opposite your office, and you grab a coffee there, and when you are done, you throw the cup there. Someone grab the cup, now extract your fingerprint from that cup, goes to the device that you have access to. Now, yes, he has to have access or proximity to that device. Now, one way or another, he finds a way close to your device, and he was able to imprint that fingerprint. Boom, he's in. That's why Windows Hello now eliminates that fingerprint most of the time. It now says, now your fingerprint or your biometrics or your facial, your iris is being collected in that device and stored as a digital hash code. Now, we no longer want you to supply that biometrics most of the time. Just supply a PIN. It's only you that knows that 4-digit PIN, and that 4-digit PIN is now bounded to that biometrics. Now, someone needs to know, even the PIN can be hacked, because trust me, in a permutation of 4 or 6, if you have a device that can roll it within some quick time, it will not try possible combination of 4-digit PIN or 6-digit PIN. Boom. By the time it's rolled different ones, that's why this form of authentication also incorporate a threshold in which if you try 3 consecutive PIN, 3 consecutive wrong PINs, it will fail and lock you out. It depends on how the admin set it up. Some admin, by default in Entra ID, if you try 10 password, you are locked out. I think we'll discuss that in detail in the smart lockout. So let's discuss that in detail in smart lockout. But a lockout threshold is set in some cases for this kind of authentication mechanism, so that when someone peradventure finds his in close proximity to your device, and he was able to supply PIN or try to use some device that can generate different 4-digit PIN or permutate, try through a combination of 6 digits, 5 digits within a short time before they get caught, boom, they are in. So, like I said, all these authentication methods, they have their own pros and cons, but for this passwordless or biometric one, the distance, the proximity is an advantage, meaning isolating the threat actors from close proximity to those devices that are bounded is an advantage for you. Even though they cannot intercept your code, your password, they cannot intercept the code or the biometrics or PIN because of lack of proximity close to those bounded devices. But once they have close proximity to your device or they have access to your biometrics, that gives them extra layer. So every form of authentication has its own pros and it has its own cons. That's why I always said security is not an absolute, even though modern security has tried to eliminate network perimeter as a less secure method of security perimeter, and security has been moved down to identity as a perimeter, which is now also enclosed by zero trust policies. The three basic principles: zero trust policies, zero trust principle, which is least privilege, meaning don't grant over access to someone. Always grant the least privilege access, or grant only the most minimum access that can allow someone to do his job. If someone just need a read permission on a certain resources or application, don't give him more than that. If he needs an admin or write permission, just give him only that. Don't give him more than what he needs. Always assign the least privilege that can allow someone to do his job. If he needs more than that, then make sure it goes through approval stage. And once the job is done, boom, quickly take it out. In fact, if you can do it, configure a just in time where you assign that particular permission or rights within a specific time. You don't need to configure it yourself. There are different technologies that configure that just in time. I think Microsoft Entra ID has that, have just in time as well. But I think you need the right license, which is P2, Microsoft Entra ID P2 license to be able to use access control just in time. Just in time is a feature under access control in Entra ID. Access review is the feature. Now, you grant that person, that user account or identity access for 2 hours duration. Within 2 hours, boom, it is taken away. You don't need to interfere. Once the duration exceeds, if he needs extra time before the times run out, he now requests for extra time for extension. Now it comes to the admin now seeks justification for extension, then he approves it or rejects it. That's just in time for you. And I think PIM in Entra ID also does that. I do that every day in my work. I configure just in time. It is there already configured. Someone wants to access a certain resource, he goes there and requests access. I grant access for so duration, or within the 8 hours of work today, or within 6 hours, I just grant that particular access. Once the time is running out and he could not finish what he wants to do, he requests for extension. I go review it with my manager, we extend or we reject. That's just in time or privileged identity management in the cloud. I think on the on-premises space, there are some security, third-party security services that provide just that. I think they use PAM, that is privileged identity management, privileged access management. Most of them are those are like Checkpoint, Beyond Trust. They have access. What do you call those? Access. Anyway, there are plenty of those security vendors out there that utilize PM and PAM as a just-in-time feature. So now we all understand how Windows Hello is configured. Let's not overflow this and move forward. Now, any question before we start discussing SSPR, which is self-service password reset? Any questions so far? No question? Okay. I'll take it on that you have understood what I've said so far, and you don't have any question on that. Now, SSPR, it's a mechanism, like I think, as we have been saying throughout this bootcamp, admins, what admins doesn't like every day is that they keep resetting password every day for users. Yes, sometimes in a day at work, you reset 20 users' password. I'm talking about in a large enterprise, and the admins tends to get fatigued. The user has to waste hours, man hours, productive hours waiting for the admin to reset that password. Now, that man hour or that productivity downtime has been eliminated because the user now can reset his password. Once he forgets his password or he was locked, the user is locked out, he doesn't need to worry. He doesn't need to wait for admin. He doesn't need to go through any checks and bureaucracy or bottlenecks of going through approval stages. He can reset his password through a Microsoft link. It's a Microsoft link. Once you supply, you go to the link, you supply your Entra ID account and the password. Yeah, it won't ask you for password anyway. It will just supply this, and then it will prompt you to do MFA. You need to now verify who you are. That is where your SSPR authentication methods come in. Yes, not only multi-factor authentication method, there is also authentication method the admin needs to configure for SSPR. And it is highly recommended for admins to configure the highest secure, the most secure form of authentication method. Because yes, someone is now claiming anybody, even people outside your organization, trust me, if I know your organization domain, I can clone or I can guess a user account. That's how we all get phishing emails, right? Someone guess your email and he keeps sending you phishing emails. Now, if someone can guess your email and he can send you a phishing email, he can also go to SSPR, which is a let me share my screen. Instead of sharing let me share my screen entirely so that I'll show you. Stop sharing. Share again. Share entire screen. Yeah, I think it should be this one. All right. So let me know if you can still see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Yes, you can see it.
Okay. Now, what I'm trying to say is the password reset, I think you should, no, you can't customize it. I don't think Microsoft allows for organizations to customize their password reset link, but it is generally known that there is a general Microsoft account or Entra ID account set password reset link. Now, if I can guess your email in your organization, I can go ahead and try to reset your account. And if I was lucky to reset your password, then I can be able to log in. That's why we need authentication method for SSPR, so that not everybody can go and try to reset your password, especially people outside your organization. I think it is aka.ms /SSPR. Let's try this. Good, this is it. So it's either you go with passwordreset.microsoftonline.com. I don't like remembering that. I go with the shortcut aka.ms /SSPR. That will redirect, it will redirect to passwordreset.microsoftonline.com. And this is the general password reset Microsoft has. I think organizations can try to customize this that is tailored to their own organization so that someone cannot interfere. But I think I'm not sure, but I think I have come across an organization asking if they can customize this so that it doesn't become just this general one. But it's possible Microsoft is not yet supporting that. So now, if I can guess your organization account, let's see. So I guess this account, and I want to reset the password for this account. If I'm lucky to reset the password for this account, boom, I can get in, and I can access the organization. I can access the resources that this user account has, and that is called account takeover. Yes, someone has taken over your account. That account has become compromised. So if I know your domain and I know how your company set up their username, I can try to do that, because this this URL for password reset, oh my God, you can see it has really picked up from the organization. So that means I guess this account correctly, but trust me, you don't need to go and try this because it won't work. I've already left this organization, so the account doesn't exist. So this is just an example. And if we try to do a password reset, it will now prompt for the authentication method the admin has set in that organization. The email user, yep. So as I already told you, the email does not exist. But I'm talking about you went and you did some checks, you did some information collection on the staff on the organization. We have all sort of social media where people do different form of information collection, and I think in security we call that anyway, I've forgotten the acronym, but there's an acronym for collecting information on individuals. And once you collect enough information, you should be able to guess someone's account, and you try to reset the password, and you're able to reset the password. Maybe they don't have a very strong authentication method. You're able to take over that account, and that account is compromised, and you'll be able to access what that account has, even elevate some access, because at the point of entry, once you get access, the next form of this is to elevate access. So I believe you understand what I'm trying to say, but we'll see how to configure this authentication method for this, how this admin was able to configure this. So that's about a user was being able to enable, configure SSPR so that he can independently reset his password when he forgets it, or when he's locked out, or when he feels the password, the account is compromised. He wants to now quickly reset the password without waiting for admin. So self-service password reset doesn't need to be when you forget your password. When you feel your account has reached the password reset policy deadline, meaning maybe in my organization we set 60 days, 30 days, 90 days password expiration policy. Once the expiration policy is reached and you are prompted to reset your password, then you quickly just utilize this and reset your password. Or once you feel your account is compromised or your password is so weak, now you want to change it to a more secure, complex password that only you can remember. In fact, you don't need to remember a password. Create a very complex password, save it somewhere on your device. Save it somewhere so that whenever you want to use it, you just either copy or you just say autofill. It will automatically fill it for you. You don't need to remember the password. There are a lot of new technologies now that you don't need to go to get password fatigue. And I think SSO has also eliminated a lot of password fatigue so that you don't need to keep supplying your password and username when you want to access your application or a certain resource that keeps logging out based on session timeout. So there is SSO, there is password managers, and there is autofill from those password managers. So I think you have all the reason to create your password, a complex password for yourself. And this self-service password reset is a feature that the admin will now enable in your tenant, and you, the user, need to now register and configure your account for it. Yes, even though the admin has to enable it, the user needs to configure it. You don't need to keep calling the help desk or the admins to reset your password. You have now autonomy to do it yourself. But there's a requirement from the admin to register it and configure the authentication methods that are required. For me as an admin, I will remove phone call and SMS as a form of authentication for this SSPR. But trust me, SSPR has phone call. It has SMS where a token will be sent to you as in your SMS phone number that you registered, or you'll be a bot will call you and will read out the token for you. Then you supply that token to here. You supply the token once you pass this stage. Then you will now be able to set a new password for yourself. once it verifies, yes, the token is correct. So we'll see how admin set this up and how the user can register the authentication method configured by the admin. Yes, the user needs to register the admin needs to configure the authentication method, but the user needs to register his device or his account for that. So we have to see that for SSPR. It's a very long process, but hopefully we have time to do that. So that's why I have to rush. So these are the steps. I'm just trying to explain the steps briefly here. The admin needs to, this is enabled by the admin in Entra ID. We'll see how to do that. I think it's under password reset blade. The admin will enable it. Then the admin will select either of this. But like I said, I will not enable phone call. Yeah, phone call is better than SMS. Email is okay. But if someone already has access to your device, then it doesn't make sense. The same for the app. If someone has access to your device that has the Authenticator app, this app means Authenticator app. Yeah. Now, the admin can also define the registration requirement, meaning before a user can register, he needs a device that meets this requirement. He needs some certain requirements. We'll see what are those requirements. Then after we meet up with those requirements, then the user can we can now test the password reset flow. That's what I was trying to do here, to test a password reset flow. But we are not using this account. Don't worry, we'll use our account. I'm not authorized to use this, so don't use it. Oh, it's not gonna go away, but we'll try another account so that it go away. Anyway, so we'll see SSPR. It is the longest lab we have today. Now, any question on SSPR before we start talking about smart lockout and password protection? Because I think this should be the mid-level. We're at the midway of our session for today. But before we go on break, let's discuss password protection and smart lockout. Then we take a 5-minute break. We come back, we continue. We quickly finish with the Kerberos authentication and VM authentication. Then we start with our hands-on and see how an admin can configure it, and then test how a user should be able to register his device, either phone number or authenticator app. We'll see how to do that. So, but before we do that, let's go through password protection and smart lockout. But before that, any questions so far? Based on what we have discussed about SSPR, Windows Hello, Passwordless, and Microsoft Authentication app. Any questions so far on what we have discussed? No? Okay. All right, so password protection is a feature within the Entra ID that Microsoft has enabled or configured as a capability where admin, that is your global admin, your Entra ID global admin, can be able to configure a password complexity or password protection policies that can protect your password. And it goes throughout your password lifetime. It's all about maybe banning some simple password, banning or configuring some custom password that are not allowed. But this feature is only available for Microsoft Entra ID P1 and P2 license. So if you have the free access like me, the Microsoft Entra ID free access or free tier, you need to upgrade to P1 or P2. Everyone that has free tier has 30 days free trial for P1 or P2. So in this session, in this hands-on lab, I'm going to show you how we can upgrade my account or your account from the free tier to, because I saw someone asking that last week, or is it this week in the group, in the WhatsApp group. So I have to leave my account to remain that way so that I can show you. So I'll show you how we can upgrade to a free trial. Then once we upgrade to free trial, it doesn't take long. Then we'll now have that feature enabled for us to be able to test out all this today's hands-on lab. Hopefully Microsoft will not just take time keeping us. So what is the password protection policies? We'll see what are the policies. It's all about the password complexity, password length. When we talk about password complexity, is a combination of what characters you allow that users must have before they can create a password. When they try to create a password that doesn't have those combinations, it will not allow it. It will not tell them the password is not combination, or your password is not supported by your organization password protection policy. Yeah, it will let the user know that it has not met up with the organization password policy. Yes, so that is what password protection does. It allows the admin to configure the complexity of password. Now, that does not mean that free tier doesn't have a very complex password. It does, but I think Microsoft only sets 12 or 8 characters for password. In fact, 4 or 6 characters, which for me is not yet secured, because any simple dictionary attack software can break your password, can hack into your password. Now, added to, maybe you did not configure any form of extra authentication method. Once somebody crack your password, he's into your Azure or Entra ID, elevate access. He has taken over your resources. No, we're not even talking about ransomware now, because this is not ransomware. You have been hacked. Your password is hacked, and everything is now taken over because of simple password hacked. So that's why you can see in security, every identity, entity, or every object within your architecture is a weakest link, or is a chain, or is a vulnerable attack surface. Because if the weakest chain of your entity or your component of services is being breached into, then from there, once someone has even the lowest level of access to your organization, he can, if some measures are not, if some security measures or policies were not already enabled by your admin in different layers, segregate different component or services, then escalation will happen or elevation will happen. Once escalation or elevation happens, someone gives his access to admin privilege. From there, elevate, take over. Everything is taken over, and it depends on their intentions, either to ask for a compensation, for you to pay some ransom, or destroy, they want to cause disaster, and they destroy your organization, or take over your environment, and you have to start all over. So we have to be very careful with security. Always follow the principle of least privilege. Like I said, the 3 principles is always assume breach. Yes, always assume breach. Least privilege is to always assign the least privilege. Do not assign more than what someone needs. Ask questions. What is it that you need to do? Do you think this can do it? All right, then go ahead and assign the least possible permission that he needs. Don't overdo it, give it a permission if someone doesn't need it. If someone needs a permission that you feel is too high, then document that and give it within a just-in-time period, so that you can monitor and take it away once he's done or she's done. So that's password protection. Now, smart lockout is all about configuring a lockout session, a lockout policy. Yes, a lockout threshold. Yes, thank you, threshold. A lockout threshold, meaning at what threshold or counter or repetition or failed attempt do I need to lock my users, or someone claiming to be impersonating my users that is trying to log into our organizations? That is where you can set up. By default, Microsoft has already configured that for you, even if you don't have custom one, or you don't have this feature enabled. Entra ID has a default smart lockout policy or threshold. But most of our organizations, due to our best practice, due to our organization security policy that states that our smart lockout threshold should be 60 seconds. Yes, 60 seconds, 2 hours, 1 hour. Why? Why are you locking someone for 1 hour? That's based on the organization policy. If you are working in a bank, maybe it is allowed for you to lock someone out once it made multiple failed attempts to access a certain resource. But if you are working in an organization that doesn't take security much, or they don't need much security, no organization doesn't need security, but what I'm trying to say is maybe security is not much of a concern, then smart lockout can be set to the minimum threshold, maybe 60 seconds. By default, it's 60 seconds there. It's 60 seconds, meaning 1 minute. If someone make multiple attempts and he failed and he's locked out, his account is locked out, he has to wait 1 minute. He has to wait 1 minute to attempt again. Because if the account is locked out, even if you keep attempting, it won't allow you log in. It will just tell you that this account is locked out. So once the 1 minute threshold passes, you try to get in. If it is correct credentials, it will allow you in. But within that 1 minute that you are locked out, even if you supply the correct credential, it won't allow you in. Yes, even if you supply the right credential, it will still keep you locked out until the smart lockout duration expires. Then when you attempt after that, it will allow you in. We'll discuss that in detail and the best practices for both on-premises and cloud-only accounts. We'll see how that plays out. I think that should be here. Yeah, so like I said, smart lockout threshold allows us to set the threshold and the reset counter. In most cases, Microsoft doesn't release the default or their configured reset counters, because if someone knows the reset counter, he should be able to configure an automation that can bypass the reset counter. Yes, if I know your reset counter is every 1 hour or every 2 seconds, then I will set my automation to quickly try it within that duration. It will make attempt within that duration, then wait. Then I make attempt again, then wait. It's automation. Automation can do a lot of things. But if I don't know, I'll just configure it based on my assumption, and my assumption may not be right. So my automation will not work. I'll just keep try and error, and I will not get it right. So Microsoft did not usually release what they configured for this capability. This capability is smart lockout capability reset counter, but they will allow you to set out your reset, your lockout thresholds and the lockout duration. Yes, you can set out the lockout, the smart lockout thresholds and the lockout duration. The threshold is the number of attempts the user should make before it's locked out. Now, the duration is for how long, if the user is locked out, for how long should that user be kept out, even if that user supplied the right credential, for how long should he remain locked out? Now, the advantage of smart lockout is it blocks brute force attack, because we have all these Rainbow and dictionary softwares that hackers buy from dark web, and they keep attacking your. Once they target your organization, they keep attacking that account, or that maybe they will look for people from marketing. That's what I observed. They look for people from sales, marketing, or they look for the CEOs. They'll go to LinkedIn, look at the CEO, then they will now try to make up the CEO's email accounts. Now they will now put that account as a subject of as a target of their brute force attack. They keep attacking that account. Once you go through, as an admin, if you go through that account, sign-in logs or audit logs, you see a lot of sign-in attempts failing. And when you check where are these sign-ins coming from, you see the sign-in coming from Korea. In the next second, it is coming from China. In the next second, it's coming from Russia. In the next second, it's coming from US, UK. Why is this same CEO signing from UK, Korea within 1 minute? Is he flying to Korea? In the next second, he's flying to Korea. That is brute force attack. That's brute force attack. So if you configure a smart lockout, it will lock that account out. But why it is being called smart lockout is not because it is locking the user the incorrect, because it is, this smart lockout is configured with a machine learning technology that it understands the user familiar location. Yeah, maybe your CEO always lives in, let's use Nigeria, Lagos as an example. Your company is in Lagos, Nigeria, and your CEO is supposed to be in Nigeria, and he's now logging in from UK. The next second is logging in from Korea. In 2 seconds later, it's logging in from China. Smart lockout will now dictate an unfamiliar location. It will now lock all login coming from those locations, unless those logins are correct. and they need to be correct in the first attempt or second attempt or third attempt. Once it passes 3 threshold, it will now start blocking them, depending on what you set as the threshold or the duration. But by default, for free tier, for all Microsoft Entra ID tenants and users, Microsoft has set 10 failed attempt threshold. Yes, 10 failed attempt threshold is there. You can change it if you have the right license, like I said. From 10, you can lower it. Maybe if someone tried 5 times, lock him out, please. You don't need to set the familiar location. I think Microsoft does not. Yeah, I think for smart local, you don't need to set the familiar location, but you can configure that on your own under CA policy. That is under conditional access policy. You can configure that any user, you can block some certain countries or regions from accessing your services. Why? Because you know that your company doesn't work with those regions or those countries. So whoever your client is or whoever is accessing your company services or application from that region is going to be locked out. You agree that you're locking those countries out. The admin needs to be given that instruction based on the company or the business needs. So you can now set a policy that locks out countries that countries that your business does not support. Those are the countries that your business does not support them. Or so if someone is trying to access your service from that country, maybe that user may be exempted if he called out to the CEO, to the security team and say, sorry, I'm on travel. I'm in so country that you are locking out. Can you please exempt my own access? Yes, that particular user, you can exclude him from the policy. Only that user will be excluded. Any other will still remain locked out. Only that user will be able to access. And even that user, once he leaves that location, you remove him from the exclusion policy. That is configured under conditional access policy. I think that's what you'll be configuring tomorrow on your tomorrow session. Now, like I said, smart local policy eliminates brute force attack, and phishing is also phishing resistant. And if you have the right license, you can customize your smart local policy as well. We'll see how to configure this as well, from the default one to our own custom ones. And now, before we go on break, if your identity is a hybrid identity, meaning you have your Active Directory, your user account are Entra ID, sorry, are active on-premise Active Directory domain, and now that domain is now domain joined to Microsoft Entra ID domain, meaning now you are running a hybrid identity, right? You are using Microsoft Entra ID Connect. Now, both your on-premise user is the same user that is being used on the cloud. That kind of identity is called hybrid identity, meaning it is no longer a cloud identity only. It is a on-premises. Why does companies still keep that? Is because if Microsoft is facing issues with their Entra ID identities, your users doesn't just get locked out. They can still be able to access their services because your identity you still have your identity being managed by you on your physical devices, somewhere on-premises, not on the cloud. So even if Microsoft is facing issues on their Entra ID services, not the whole Entra ID, maybe certain services of Entra ID is facing service downtime or going through a plan or unplanned maintenance or unexpected maintenance or unexpected downtime, boom. For users or companies that still have hybrid identity, they can still have access. Because now, for smart lockouts, that is for hybrid identities, it is recommended that you set the policy for cloud, the threshold. Let's start with the threshold before duration. The threshold should be for the cloud identity should be higher than the one for the on-premise. Why? Because if someone from the someone on-premise accounts is being locked out, and now your cloud account is still there, but we know that the cloud account, you don't have much control over your cloud services because it's being managed by third parties. Your cloud services are being supplied to you by Microsoft, by Amazon, by Google, by Alibaba. So you want to, even if you are looking quickly, trying to lock something quickly or set duration, you may want to quickly lock the ones that you have less control over. That is the cloud. That's why the threshold for the on-premise should be lower than the threshold for the cloud should be higher. Now, the duration for the on-premise should be lower as well, meaning so that you avoid what we call your account locked out, because some threat actors tends to target your on-premise account. Yes, their intention is to block you. They call that account blocked. They are not trying to take over your account. They just want to make sure they block your admin or a certain user from accessing his account for a duration of time. They may have some ulterior motives for why they want to block your CEO, your financial officer, or some targeted user within your organization or staff. They subject him to brute force attack, and they know that your reset counter is going to block the user after multiple 10 attempts or 3 attempts with wrong password. They will now try 3 wrong attempts with wrong password. Now that account is locked. Once that account is locked, and it's not the user that is trying it, and once that account is locked, the user will not be able to work, and they may be able to achieve what they want to achieve by doing that. So that's why it is recommended for hybrid account. You set the threshold for duration for your on-premise AD account to lower, so that maybe less than 1 minute. You can either make it 1 minute or less than 1 minute, so that within 30 seconds the user is now allowed to attempt login again. Don't keep the on-premise user locked out for long, but you can keep the cloud user locked out for a little longer. Yeah. So that is just one of the recommended best practice out there. We'll see how to configure the smart lockout when we come back. I wanted us to go at 5:20, but it's now 5:22. So we'll come back 5:27. Then we continue with Kerberos authentication, and we start with the hands-on labs. Okay. So see you in 5:27.
Okay. All right.
All right, welcome back, guys. So let's continue where we left. We have discussed smart lockout and password protection policies or password protection. Password protection policy mechanism, whatever you want to call it. It is a feature within the Microsoft Entra ID. Any questions so far on what we have discussed before we conclude with Kerberos authentication, certificate-based authentication, and Microsoft Azure virtual machines authentication, utilizing Microsoft Entra ID as well? Any questions before we discuss the last three authentication? And then we start with our hands-on labs. No? All right, so we have a little over 30 minutes to our end of our session. So let's quickly round these three and start the lab. Hopefully 30 minutes should be enough for us to do the two labs, maybe more than two if we have enough time. Now, Kerberos. For some of us, we already know what Kerberos authentication is, but for some, honestly, this is our first time maybe seeing Kerberos authentication. Yeah, it's not something you usually see unless you are dealing with on-premise AD. When we talk about identities on the on-premise, not on the cloud, that's where you definitely be seeing Kerberos authentication. But once there is a hybrid identity where your on-premise AD, yes, your users, your groups, your applications that are on premises, meaning they are not on the cloud. When we say on premises, we mean that is owned by your organization within your physical servers. Those are identity users. Now, when these identities are being integrated to the cloud identities or to the cloud, it now becomes hybrid, meaning a mixture of cloud and on-premise. It's not a hybrid identity, right? Now, Kerberos authentication comes into play where it's a type of authentication. It utilizes Windows-based authentication where a Windows server is there hosting the application, the services. You enable a certain agent or service that will make use of Kerberos, but mostly it is used to allow users to have access, maybe on-premise users or your user base to have access to your on-premise application, meaning your desktop application, your application that you configured in-house or somewhere that is not on the cloud. Most of the modern applications are hosted on the cloud, either on your Kubernetes container or image on the cloud or somewhere on your servers that were running microservices. But wherever it is, Kerberos is mostly used for hybrid identity to access applications that are on premises. Cloud, it's easy to access cloud-based applications, but you see on-premise applications, to access them, just utilize Kerberos or application proxy. There's a service in Entra ID called application proxy. Application proxy. I think I should have it. Yes, application proxy is here. That service allows you to connect via an agent or connector. That agent is called connector. So I will use it. I will be interchanging those words, connectors or agents. It uses the connectors to allow relay of tokens and tickets between the client and the application. What do you mean by client? The client is your laptop, your mobile device, whatever you are using to access that application. Now, you need to install an agent on the server. That agent will now be the server that is running the Kerberos ticket or authentication ticket. Now it will issue a ticket, or it will send a ticket, and now it will now be received by the client and verified. But whatever is relaying this authentication for these identities is configured via the application proxy using the connectors or the agents, the connection agent. Now, what does it usually? It usually utilizes what we call the app is secured. Yes, this is a means of, instead of using VPN to access, we know that traditional VPN or most of this most of the network parameters are really constrained, or they're mostly vulnerable to attacks, listening, Nmap, just utilize some Nmap, some Wireshark, some Metasploit, boom, you start tracking some TCP and UDPs, listening, picking some packets, start decoding those packets and making sense from them. Boom, you intercept some important message. Yeah, you'll be seeing a lot of garbage message information by intercepting, but out of those garbages, you may pick a gem. So that's why mostly identity is now shifted from VPN, all these VPN and network segmentations, security, to utilizing identity as a parameter. One of these way you utilize identity as a parameter in accessing remote applications that are remote to the cloud, that are on premises. They can be on another cloud. Those remote applications can be accessed by utilizing within the Entra ID a feature called application proxy. Or you utilize the global secure network. I think we'll cover that next year within the bootcamp. We'll cover it in January. I think I should be the one taking that. But anyway, let's stick to Kerberos. Is just understand that Kerberos is a form of authentication method utilized within the Windows authentication for hybrid identities, for accessing applications that are on the desktop or on your on-premise environment. And these applications are being secured using the Windows authentication. And a Kerberos container is there that store the constraint, the delegate the tickets, the tokens, send tokens and receive tokens. It issued the token. If the token is validated and found out the token is correct, it allows access to the application for that duration. If the token is expired, boom, your session is ended. That's all about Kerberos authentication. Nothing more about that. If I try to deep dive, you just see a complex flow diagram and I start explaining all the flow, you get confused. But if you have time, go through the documentation, Microsoft public documentation, you may have it, but that documentation also does not explain in detail, just some summary overview. All right, so if there is no question on Kerberos authentication, let's discuss certificate-based authentication. As you can see, I don't have much to say as well because I want to keep it simple as well. It's also mostly utilized by our applications. Certificate-based authentication is utilized by token claim, where you configure this in your environment as well. I think it's mostly utilized by the applications or automation or Microsoft Graph APIs. So mostly you hardly see a user identity utilizing the only applications that are using service principals, SPN, that utilizes most of these certificate-based authentication and Kerberos authentication, meaning your application needs to also be registered in your Entra ID where it will now be issued a service principal by the Entra ID. So the application now your application now is also an identity itself, or it was issued an identity. Now you can now start connecting the application proxies, the connectors, configure your Kerberos on premises, on the on-premise server, and boom, everything. The same for application-based. You need to configure or authenticate with trusted certificates. And like I said here, it's mostly useful or beneficial for high security environment because your certificate needs to be coming from trusted certificate authorities, right? So most of that is the authentication we see here when we try to access some website that has HTTPS. Yeah. Okay. So let's see, Lufthansa. Can you see? Lufthansa start with www instead of HTTPS, meaning the certificate, why is it not going? Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm looking for a website that has the padlock button here, where it will show you the certificate, the expiration date of the certificate. Let's see, this should have it. Yeah, this is it. This is a certificate. You can check to see if that certificate is, you see, if you want to see more detail about the certificate used by this password, this is a Microsoft owned certificate, meaning Microsoft owns this website anyway. So this is the detail about the certificate. And whoever is accessing this website needs to authenticate with this certificate. The client, don't worry, the browser does that authentication in the back end, but it's authenticating with this certificate. And you can see the certificate name is graph.windows.net and is owned by Microsoft as an organization. And is signed or issued by DigiSat as the certificate authority. And this is DigiSat SHA-2 secure server. I don't know if SHA-2 is okay, but since DigiSat is a global non-certificate authority, so this is a trusted certificate, and it is not. It's going to expire It's going to expire next year in April, meaning this certificate is a valid one. It's not yet about to expire. Before it expires, Microsoft will renew it anyway. So that's what I wanted to show you about certificate authentication that has been handled by either browsers or application at the back end. The same for Kerberos is handled by applications or premise applications. I'm looking for my, okay. So let's keep it simple for you to just understand it this way, unless if you are the DevOps guy or you have become a senior security architect, then you can be discussing this in detail with the DevOps and automation team. And you guys now be generating the published key, the certificate from OpenSSL. You generate the certificate and you upload it to the key vault, where the application will now be picking it from the key vault. Nothing you need to do more. The devs and the DevOps guys will now pick it after you generate the certificate and sign it signed by the trusted CS. So that's it about certificate authentication and Kerberos. If there's no question, let's move to discuss BM authentication. So this is about logging into your machine. It's about logging in or accessing your Azure virtual machines using Entra ID. Yes, using Entra ID users. Let's see, this is my Entra ID. We all have this. If we don't have, we already explained in the previous session, bootcamp sessions, how you can create a free one. So to access Entra ID admins, Control-C. These are my users. This is what I want to show you. These are the users I created. And for this, in order to allow these users to access my machine without using local user, once we create, most of the time when we create a virtual machine, we create the virtual machine with a local admin or local users. Now we want to eliminate the use of local users on our machine. We want whoever log in to leave trail. We want to know who is doing, and we want to eliminate as much as possible local account usage or local admin account usage. We want to make sure it is our users within our organization domain that are accessing that machine, and we need to give them access, and we need to know what they are doing in their machine so that they will keep an audit trail for us to review later, because it's within the security best practices. For you to get certified in ISO 27001, you need to make sure you have those audit trails there. The auditor will want to see, yeah, you are keeping audits. That will make sure you met the requirements for that particular ISO requirement. I want to share the link. Well, today I'm not using the Teams app. I'm using the browser, Teams on the browser. So I've been looking for the app. Come on. All right. So this is it. And I think if you want to access Entra ID from the Azure portal, you can just go to portal.azure.com. Let me also drop it here. It's another way of accessing Entra ID from the Azure portal. You just search for Entra ID. You type Entra, Microsoft Entra or Entra, you see Microsoft Entra ID. So it's the same. It's just that the admin center gives you more features and more capabilities that the Entra ID comes with. Well, the Azure portal strips some of the features. You don't see them unless you go to Entra ID admin center. You can see it only collapses most of the things under managed and monitoring. That's just it. So if you need more features, you just have to come to the Entra ID admin center. So that's why a lot of us now prefer to do our admin work, any Entra ID admin work that's more advanced feature services within the Entra ID admin center. Now, I'm trying to explain virtual machine authentication. Let's it's good that we have Azure Portal here. So let's go to machines. At the point of creating a machine, I have existing machines that have been running since 2018 or 2019, 2018. So let's see these machines that I have, but let's try to create a new one and we'll see how to configure the Entra ID authentication at the point of creating the machine. You can have authentication enabled for both Linux servers and Windows servers, as I mentioned here on it's Linux operating systems are supported, but it needs to be the supported versions of Linux. I think Ubuntu, SUSE, and CentOS are supported Linux OS within the Azure virtual machines. Ubuntu, yeah, all these LTS long-term support, as they support the Entra ID integration. I don't know for Red Hat, but it's possible Red Hat machines, Linux machine will also support it, but you can test that on your time. All other ones here, like Alma Linux is a virtual box. It's a NVA, so I don't know if NVA will support it, but you can also test that. The same for Debian. I haven't tested these ones, but I can, even the Oracle, mostly they are just NVAs, or they are Linux boxes that supply certain service from Oracle, like this Linux Oracle Linux. It is a machine that comes with Oracle already installed. I don't know which version of Oracle it comes with, but it is not just a Linux server that you need to now install your Nginx or any other services. It is not a fresh out of the box bare metal Linux operating system. It may be maybe a SUSE Red Hat machine that Oracle is utilizing, but they have already pre-configured the Oracle database versions, different Oracle services on the Linux box. So that's what all the, but Ubuntu, no, it's a out of the box, meaning you just configure whatever you want fresh on it. It doesn't come with any other pre-installed services. You configure your services that you need on it. So, but let's not focus on the Linux. Let's go with Windows. We know Windows 11 support it, regardless of whether Pro or Home Edition. But I know on the cloud we only have Pro, so don't worry. You won't find Windows Home Edition on the cloud. Yeah, they used to have it, but not now. Yeah. So let's keep it. Oh, now they don't do zoneless. Okay, let's go to zone 1. No, okay. I want to go. Please keep your mic. Please keep. Okay. What happened? All right, maybe because I set a spending limit, it's blocking me from creating my, but anyway, I'm not going to create machines. I have to also clear out some old machines that I've been keeping. Don't create your admins as admin. I'm just using it, but don't create your admin as admin. It's not really security best practice. It's not gonna match, of course. Now, let's go. I want us to go to the management blade. I think, so this is what we're focusing on. You see this is what is about authentication. If at the point of creating this machine, I'm filling all the required parameters and I check this box. Yes, if I check this, it's going to automatically check the system assigned identity. What is it doing? It is assigning this machine an identity. Remember, I told you applications, devices can also be assigned identity, and the identity is called service principal. So a system assigned managed identity is an identity assigned to you by Microsoft, or you assign to a device, or assigned to you by the Entra ID or Azure Portal. Well, a user assigned managed identity is the identity you assign to a user. Yes, I assign a user a contributor access, reader access, virtual machine admin access to a user, yes, those are called user assigned managed identity. But if it is a system assigned managed identity, you don't have control. And those identities are mostly assigned to either applications that you register on Entra ID or devices that you that you registered to Microsoft Entra ID as well. What this is doing is, if I check this box, I am saying that this machine I'm creating with the name MCT Naija, add it to Microsoft Entra ID, my Microsoft Entra ID tenant. And that means my users, any user within my Microsoft Entra ID tenant that I assign virtual machine access administrator, this role, if I assign them this role within the Azure, they should be able to log into the machine. It can be Microsoft, the name of the role is virtual machine administrator, login administrator, or virtual machine user, login user. I think those are the two roles. Virtual, I will show you, but all what I'm trying to show you all here is virtual machine login can only be done if at the point of creating the machine, you register the machine to Microsoft Entra ID. That's the requirement. You must register that machine to Entra ID. The second requirement is you must assign your users, these users here, I must assign them a role called this virtual machine admin login or virtual machine user virtual machine login user. These two roles, the admin will allow the user to be able to do administrative task within the machine, while the user role will allow the user to be able to do only what a user should be able to, standard user should be able to do within the machine. Now, do you understand this? Let me take a screenshot and share with you on the chat as well. But I think we still need to quickly run back and do a hands-on lab on the SSPR and the authentication methods. But it's good that we have the time to see how to create a machine and then assign and how to meet up with the requirement for virtual machine authentication. Oh, sorry. I usually forget that today I'm not using the app. Okay.
Please also share with us on the WhatsApp group the screenshot.
Okay. Let me see.
Thank you.
It's good that I have the WhatsApp on my system here.
Thank you.
So, any questions so far before we jump to the SSPR hands-on lab? Okay. I believe that's it about that.
So can you run through again how to create that virtual machine on Azure?
Oh, this is so it's not about creating machine, but I was just trying to show you. I was just feeling all this. You can see I didn't even. But if you want to create a machine, let's quickly use 1 minute because, like I said, I'm a Microsoft solution architect, meaning I'm not only from the security background, I'm also from this infrastructure background. In fact, I started from the virtual machine team. So let's do it this way. If you want to create a machine in Azure, you just search for machines or you type it here, virtual machines. You click on virtual machine. Now you can see in virtual machine in Azure, we have virtual machines and we have VMSs, which is virtual machine scale set. Scale set is you have only one machine image. It will now create several instances of that machine for you that is tied to one golden image. Let's not discuss that because this is not a bootcamp about machines. Now, if you want to create a machine, once you come here, you just click on machines. Then you choose the resource, choose the subscription. For some of like for myself, I have 2 subscriptions. I don't know why it's only one that is showing, but I have 2 subscriptions. For those that have multiple subscriptions, they will definitely see a lot of subscription that they have access to. You choose the subscription you want to create the machine from. That is the Azure subscription. Now you choose a resource group. A resource group is just your logical container where you are collecting all the machines into one. You can move them from one resource group to another. Anyway, it's just a logical container for storing related servers or related machines or services or resources. So just if you don't have one, I have one for my machines that I'm using for Ansible, or for test. I think I used to have for tests. Okay, or resource group. Anyway, you can create a new one if you don't want to use any of the existing ones. So you name the machine. it doesn't matter. I think it takes lowercase or uppercase regardless, but no space. I think it also allow dash, but no hyphen. It allow hyphen, but no underscore. Sorry, you just do that on your own time, but fill the basic necessary information. Then I skipped the disk size, the networking requirement for the machine, meaning the parameter, the network or the network or subnet the machine should be in. I skipped the network security group, the public, whether the machine should have public IP, which protocol, SSH or RDP, whatever information, forget about all these things because this is not a bootcamp for machine. I went straight up to management because I know this what I'm looking for is under management. That's why I skipped straight from basics to management. Under management, under identity, you will now be able to check the box for systems assigned and then check the box for this, but I didn't check the box. I just need to check the box for login with, but it's not all machines that are supported because I didn't choose the machine operating system. That's why it's not allowing me to choose. So let's go back to basic and choose the right operating system. Okay, I choose CentOS. Automatically, it chooses CentOS 8.5 for me, but which I think this is one of the outdated versions of CentOS. CentOS is no longer being updated. So I think the updated CentOS should be maybe, I think it's no longer under the community support. So that's why it is not supporting this operating system. And if you don't want to create your machine in some availability zones, remove the zone from here. I said no zone or no availability state, no availability zones. Now, CentOS is not supporting, but let's choose Ubuntu. 20.04 is also so outdated. Let's go with 21. 24 is better, but let's go with 22. Now, I can quickly skip to management. You can see now it is now allowing me to choose because CentOS is not supported. Ubuntu is it's a supported Linux operating system for the Entra ID, but it's no longer supporting CentOS. I know back 3 years back, CentOS no longer have support, but I don't know why Microsoft just still has CentOS, or is it my environment, I think. So you check this box, it automatically check the system assigned. So any other question you have, or is there anything in particular you want to say about creating the machine? No?
No, I just want to.
Okay.
I just want to.
All right, so that's just about it. But the bootcamp is not an Azure bootcamp where we see creating machine, networking, storage, no. So, all right, guys. Any other question before we start the hands-on lab? And I think the first hands-on lab, like I said, Linux operating system, we already find out Ubuntu.
Sorry, sir. Before you, I have a question. When you took no availability zone for the virtual machine, what's the implication?
Yeah, availability zone is it's all about creating my machine. Microsoft will now have an extra copy of my machine in another region. I won't be able to have access to that machine, but Microsoft will keep an image in case there is downtime in the zone where my machine is. Then Microsoft, if there is downtime in the zone, Microsoft will now provide me another copy of that machine in a different zone, but within the same region.
Okay.
It's just for high availability, meaning another extra copy of the machine is there available for you in case of downtime in the data center in which your machine is residing. So
okay.
It's not a bootcamp for Azure, but let me still explain for you so that you understand. When you are talking of our Azure machines, for high availability, we have availability state, we have availability zone. Availability zone is about, let's say, West Europe. There is a region in Microsoft Azure called West Europe. Within West Europe, you may have a data center in Netherlands, in Amsterdam. Yeah. Another data center within West Europe may be in Malta. Okay. So Netherlands and Malta, they are all in West Europe, but I'm just setting an example. It can be Germany, but I think there's a region, German region separate. But let's use just Netherlands as a West, because I know West Europe is Netherlands. That's where the data center is. But it can be in Amsterdam. It can be in another city within Netherlands, another city within Netherlands. So those different data centers, they can be classified as zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. You understand? So that when there's an issue with this data center, the other data center will still provide your machine because it has your copy. So you will not be impacted by the service downtime of that data center.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So no questions. Again, please don't ask questions about virtual machine. We are not, we should be focusing on identity, not infrastructure. All right. So if there are no questions, our first hands-on lab is on configuring authentication method within the Azure portal. So I didn't write anything much, but what I was trying to, so that we'll go through and do it ourselves. So let's go. How to configure authentication methods for your identities. It can be configured for a specific user, for a group, for a device, for an application, or for a group of users and applications or devices. You can group your users. Now, I don't have group. I can create a group and add 1 or 2 users to the group. Creating a group is not difficult. Yes, I don't have group. So let's create one group, create new group. I believe you know how to create a group. So let's quickly create one. I'll create a security group because I want to assign identities to the group. That's why there's difference between security group and Microsoft 365 group. Microsoft 365 group is a group for mostly accessing 365 applications, such as a group for accessing SharePoint, Teams, emails, that is Outlook, and all these 365 applications, Word, Excel. But security group is mostly for assigning, it's mostly a group that you create for assigning licenses, assigning permissions. I want these users to be excluded from this. I want these users to have this access. So it's all about group for users having access, permissions, licenses. So this is why that's the difference between distribution group or M365 group and security group. Let's give it a name. We'll call it SSPR. Let's call it SSPR users. SSPR. It's just that's just a description. So let's say SSPR enabled.
Please, yes, can you zoom a bit?
Pardon?
Can you zoom a bit, sir?
Zoom. Oh, sorry, I'm using the big screen and I thought it would be wider for you. Zoom. Is it too small for you?
Yes, sir.
So I have to zoom out.
How you mean? Zoom from your end now. Pinch the screen from your end.
It needs to zoom in from his own end. You already find like this.
How does it look like now for you?
I'm able to zoom in.
No, you can reduce it. No,
it's
zoom
better,
in.
Sir.
Reduce it to, reduce it to like 25 or 25. It will be better here.
How do you see it
reduce
now?
To 25. Zoom.
But 25 will not be good, though.
Even for me, 25 will not be good.
It's tiny, sir.
Are you assessing this from? It's tiny for me as well. I won't be able to see what I'm doing because I'm using. Let's keep it 100, and you can watch the video later, or I will change it back to.
Okay, it's better this way.
It's okay.
It's better this way. It's better this way. It's
all
okay
right,
now.
So
it's okay.
If you are accessing it from phone, if you are accessing it from phone, your phone, mobile phone, definitely it will be too small for you to see. So you have to zoom on your screen. You zoom your screen to see it, or you watch the recording later from our YouTube channel. Then you can watch it on your laptop or a device that has bigger screen. Trust me, it's because your device that you're watching from has a lower screen. So you have to zoom it yourself. So,
better, sir.
All right, thank you. So let's create this group quickly because we're not focusing on creating group. I just want to make sure now this group is an empty group. It doesn't have members. If I click on the group, you'll see that it doesn't have member, it doesn't have owners. So I can add, maybe my organization has 900 users, but I just want only the guys from finance team to be in this group so that every time they want to reset their password themselves, they must authenticate. That's what I want to configure. I'm isolating certain users, but mostly it's recommended you enable it for all users in your organization, and all users is a group created by Microsoft automatically for you. You don't create it yourself. There's a default group called all users. I don't know why I don't have it, but there should be a default group called all users. It contains all your users within. It's a default group. You can't delete it. But you can see, I can add members to this group so that when they want to log in, I can, yep. So I am targeting, let's target Emmanuel, my guest account, no, let's not use that one. It may get me locked. Yes, let's use it. Okay. You can see it is not only listing out users, it's also listing out applications, right, guys? You can see all these are applications, and these are applications with service principal. So it's not only applications, even devices. Look at what even Azure AD application proxy that I told you about, that you can utilize its connectors for Kerberos authentication is also here. That is for accessing on-premise application. So I'm just adding only users for now so that we test SSPR. Good. We can also test MFA. You can test access permission. That's why groups are very important. You can exclude these users. So that's important of group. Now let's go back and start. Now, once you are in Entra ID, you comes down to protection. Let's collapse this. Okay, I think it's within Entra ID. You come to authentication methods. What SSPR is password reset here. For those that can see my screen, password reset, where my mouse is hovering, password reset. But our first lab is about authentication methods. So authentication method, password protection. Now, I told you my tenant is a free tier. That's why you can see it's now telling me, it's showing me some features on this page require a Microsoft Entra ID premium license. That is P1 or P2 are premium license. There are other premium licenses such as the business premium, but P1, P2 are business Microsoft Entra ID business premium. So any of those premium is what can allow me to set smart lockout threshold, lockout duration, and maybe what I told you about password protection policy, which is the custom ban policy, enforcing custom policy. I can list out some password that my user should not use. Yes, you can list out somebody should not just go and type when he's resetting his password, you shouldn't go and just type password 123, password 123456. No, you can ban it when he starts to use. Once you list out all kind of password here, including valid password that you feel that are complex, but they are coming from maybe a breached part of compromised list of passwords that are compromised, and you already know about them. Then you list them here. It will block your users from setting a password that looks like that. So not only hackers can go to dark web and buy passwords that were compromised, you can also have it yourself and then list them here, and your users will not be able to create a password with that, will not be able to use password with those that has that kind of combination, or yes, such combination. But for you to be able to set that, you need to have the right license. So let's go and get the right license. By the way, we are supposed to be checking authentication method. So let's come to authentication method. This is it. Now, these are authentication methods here. The legacy ones used to be somehow here. I think Microsoft has finally removed it last month. Is it September, October? They removed it. It was supposed to be somehow here where you will be able to configure the old authentication method. But let's take to authentication method here, which are before you see SMS. Yeah, it's still there. SMS is still here, but Microsoft has recently asked all organizations to migrate. Yeah, it's very good. I remember correctly, September 30th. Microsoft enforces this, that all organizations must move from legacy authentication method for both MFA and self-service password resets. Yes. Now, if you configure this, because I haven't changed mine, I think if I come to password reset, I should be able to see the old legacy ones. If I come to authentication method for my SSPR, yep, read password reset policy forbidden, because I don't have, oh yes, because Microsoft has deprecated it. In fact, I wish they will remove this, because before you will be able to see it, it's not because I don't have the right permission. I'm a global admin on this. on this tenant because it's my tenant. But why am I not seeing it? Everybody will see this because Microsoft has, as of that 30th, Microsoft has removed this. So before 30th September, you can be able to configure SMS, email, and phone call. For what? For for resetting your password. So for authentication, this is it. Oh my God, we have gone over the time, but Emmanuel, just give us by 6:15 or 6:20, we'll round up. Let's quickly do this. So this is no longer supported here. So Microsoft move it here to authentication method here, and always recommend the most secured one, which is the passwordless. Now, what are the passwordless? Is passkey. That is the FIDO, the Microsoft Authenticator. These first two are the most recommended, followed by temporary access pass, because this is a one-time use token, TOTP. So it's mostly just one time, but for continuous authentication, these two are the most recommended one. Microsoft are even advocating for Microsoft Authenticator most of the time, but if you have a Windows or device that meets up the requirement for FIDO, you also go with FIDO as well. Now, for my tenant, I did not enable FIDO, and if I enable it as an admin, I'll just click here, then click on enable. Then it will enable for all users, but bro, I don't want to enable for all users because I'll block myself. So what do I do? I will now, let's see, configure. Yeah, so I'll need to configure. So if I configure FIDO, it will allow up to safe service setup, meaning during safe service setup, it will require for FIDO. During attestation for the device, it may require FIDO if I say yes. Now, for restriction, if you enforce key restriction, it will restrict the use of key in some certain cases that you enforce. And it will also restrict the use of key in your Microsoft Authenticator, meaning you are blocking the use of Microsoft Authenticator for FIDO as a requirement for using FIDO. That is, your admin can come here and configure this based on what you desired to configure. But if you enable it, these are the people you include and these are the people you exclude. You can exclude a group or a user, but I don't think it allows user, it allows only group. Yeah, so you have to have groups, even if it is just one user within that group that you need to. When I checked it and I select, it will now exclude these users, but I'm not excluding them. I'm not even going to enable FIDO or passkey for my device. That's like configuring Windows Hello. If you configure FIDO, it's going to be Windows Hello. Next time I'm trying to log in my device, it will now ask me to set up. Yes, it will prompt for me to set up. If you have not set it up, it will now prompt you to set up. It will now capture your biometrics, that is your fingerprint, your whatever, but it will definitely prompt that. And imagine your device doesn't have a biometrics capture. Maybe your device doesn't have working camera, it doesn't have a fingerprint scanner. So how are you going to set up FIDO? And you already enable it here. So be careful of what you enable. Make sure your device has all the requirements. It has the camera or it has the fingerprint scanner somewhere. I think my device has all of them. It has this fingerprint scanner here and it has the camera as well. So I can be able to enable it, but I'm not going to do that. It's not, by the way, what I'm just putting it under exclude. Even if I enable, I'm excluding myself. So I'm not going to get locked out. But don't worry, I'm not even going to enable it. So I'm just showing you how to do it. You can see if you enable it, it can target all users or it can target a certain group. But if you want to target all users, just check this radio button. But if you want a certain groups, if I check all users, all my users will be targeted. But if I checked select group, then I'll click add group. Then I'll choose this group to add. And registration for the user is optional. You can see, I don't know why it's not allowing me, maybe because of my license, it's not allowing me to allow the users to register. If I choose that, it will allow me for the users to register. If I click on save, let's choose on remove, let's remove this exclude. Come back. My admin account is not included in this group, so it's fine for me to enable passkey here. But all I need to do now after is just to click on save. Now it will sync passkeys and passkey profiles on my device but it's still in a public preview, meaning it is not general available. That's why some features are grayed out maybe, or either licensed or because it is still in public preview. When a feature is in public preview, it is, yes, available to public, but it's still in the development phase. It's not yet released to general availability, GA, by Microsoft. So there may be some functionality defects or some functionality that are not yet available or for you to use. But Microsoft will definitely come to you back for feedback. So, but I don't want to opt in for it. If I click on opt in, it will definitely allow that. Maybe to allow me to have this feature. But that's how to do it. Discard. Let's go and do other authentication, enable other authentication method as admin. So passkey is just one of the authentication method I need to enable. So all authentication method enable here, you will see them with yes. OTP, by default, OTP, yes, Microsoft set it yes by default, but any other ones, you need to enable it. Certificate based, you don't need certificate based for your users. It's for mostly for automations. Software authentication, that is open authentication, tokens. Like I said, it's mostly used by apps, your applications on the background when they are accessing some certain services or privileges. They usually exchange tokens or a session token. You can also configure with a hardware token, but it's still in preview. We already know what temporary access pass is. SMS, you need, if you enable this, you have to set, this is admin, not user doing it. This is admin. When I enable it, then users will need to add their phone number if I enable it. But it's not available to me because this authentication method delivers a one-time code to SMS via SMS to a user phone, and users then input the code in signing. This is only available for multi-factor authentication and SSPR, which is self-assessment. It can also be configured to be used as a first factor. Now, enable for only users, not group. Only selected user group. I don't want. You can say user sign-in, it will prompt them, but I want only selected groups, not all users. So this is the group. If you don't have the group, go and create the groups. And you can see once I select a group, it removes all users from that. Now it will only enforce for the users. And if I check this box, during signing, it will prompt the users for that SMS. If they don't have it configured, they can now have to go and configure it. I'll show you in the lab now how to configure it for SSPR. Now, that is how to enable authentication method. But so for me, I only enable this, and I can enable passkey if my device met the requirements, and if I need it, seriously need it, but I don't need all these ones. That's why I didn't enable them intentionally. Now, if you need any of them and you have met up requirement, your users met up any of this requirement, enable it. But the most secured ones among them is a authenticator, passkey, and that is passwordless, which is FIDO, authenticator, and the temporary access. Maybe some of these ones are more secure, but all these ones can be intercepted. So guys, any question on how to enable authentication method? Like I said, all you need to do is click on, just come to Entra ID, authentication method, and policies. Then you choose the authentication method you want to enable for your. This is organizational settings, not for only one user. Once you enable it, you can choose which users you want impacted, all users or a group of users. And you can start with some test bed user. You can create a test user, start with that test user, see how it works. If it is not blocking the user, if there's not any troubleshooting to do, then you can now enable it in gradually, group by group. You target group by group until you enable it for all users. Any questions so far on labs on authentication method? So for this migration, once either I migrate or not, Microsoft has already migrated me. You can see it's saying migration process, but either I migrated or not, Microsoft has already migrated my account. Even though it's showing in progress, Microsoft has already migrated. That's why when I came to passwords reset, it's no longer there for me. It's timing out for me because as at this deadline, Microsoft has migrated all tenants to make use of this new modern authentication. Unless you enable voice call or SMS or email, Microsoft will have defaulted all those ones for you. So once I say complete and I save, no changes will happen, but all my users will now have to go through MFA once they want to log into Azure portal or Entra ID. I can test it now. We can still get locked out, and I have to do Entra ID, but I have configured MFA in the past three years or 4 for my admin account, so I will not get locked out because I will just have to pick my my device and authenticate, and that's it. But let's not do it during the lab session. If there are no questions, let's go with the next hands-on lab, which is now how to enable, how an admin will enable SSPR for his environment, and how the users should test self-service password reset. And then we can recap what we discussed, and I think that's it. But let's quickly do that lab because I owe you to that. I owe that to you. So for SSPR as an admin, if you want to configure it for your tenant or organization wide, once you come to Entra ID Admin Center, you come to password reset here. Already, you must have already configured your authentication method for your organization. Now you are trying to configure SSPR as, yes, you want all your users now, all users or subgroup of users to be able to reset their password themselves. Now, if I click on select, by default, I think it's none. But if you click on all, fine. But if you want to do selected, you have to have the right license. Now, I don't have the right license, that's why it's not showing me the group of users I want to target for that. And you can also configure the registration policy, meaning the requirement for the users to go through for them to register before they can register their account. If you are saying yes, then users must register before they sign in. It will enforce this on all users. If you check this, on all users that you selected here, here, on all users that you impacted for the SSPR here will be impacted with this registration policy, meaning it will ask them to register SSPR. Like I said, there are 2 requirements. The admin needs to enable it here on the here in properties. He needs to enable it for that user, for all the users, or for that selected user, target user. Then the user also needs to register. And this is where you set the register requirement. Do you want to, if you don't set this, the user will still be able to sign in without by skipping the SSPR phase. It will prompt him to do it, but he can skip it. But if you set this to yes, the user must complete the SSPR authentication by either configuring his downloading the authenticator app on his device, or by imputing his mobile device in his profile. He needs to update his profile with his mobile number or with his email address. Then once the user completes that registration, he will be able to sign in. That is what you are doing. You are now blocking all users. They must comply. They must comply by registering the authentication method you enforce before they can now be able to log in and start using the service they want to use. So how do we enable this? Because this is our last lab and I don't want to disappoint you. We need to enable, to do that, we need to have the right license, and to have the right license, let's go to billing, trials. Yes, that's what I was telling you the other day. You go to billing here in Entra ID, trials, you enable your license. Every free trial account has all these. Free access account has free trials. I thought we have P1, our enable P1, but we don't have, we just have P2. So I'll straight go and activate. Oh my God, we're supposed to complete this by now. Well, anyway, free trial for 1 month. How many people is this for? Let's say 5, or let's keep it 10. Choose the length of your subscription. How often do you want to be billed? This is just free trial. Let's go with monthly. Payment due today, after 1 month. So Microsoft wants to understand the size of my user base. You understand? That's why they're asking this, and they want to know for how long do I want to subscribe. Ooh. After 1 month, Microsoft will be charging me. After the free trial, they will be charged 108. But anyway, that's not my concern. The concern is just do it for 1 month. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know I have to supply all this information again, and then the payment confirmation. So guys, I think we have to skip on this. It's going to take time to start filling that up. I thought it's just the first validation, but anyway, we already see how we can do that. And once you activate, you should be able to click on select group, and you need to, once you enable for groups, when you set selected users, you'll be able to add group, just like the way we did for authentication method. If you set all, it will impact all the organization, all the user organization, but I think it's highly recommended for organization to have it all. But if you just want to start with some targeted groups, then you do it. And if you want to exclude some users, then you can set some users under exclusion, authentication method exclusion. You don't do it from here. You did under authentication method exclusion for that authentication method. Unfortunately, because we have run out of time and I need to fill up this long form, I didn't know that I need to fill that long form. I would have done it before the class. So let's just skip this, and you should be able to do it yourself. Trust me, once you come here and you selected, you should be able to enable it. Then for the user, if once it prompts him to register, I think he can just go to my HTTPS, not password reset, for you to, that is how to test it, but how to register the user. Remember, the user has to register first. Once he wants to test it, is the SSPR, but when the user wants to set it up, is aka.ms/SSPR setup. Yes, so that's how the user should register. SSPR setup, that's just the shortcut. Did I miss something? aka, yeah, aka.ms setup. Or should I go with the long one? Setup. Yeah. So my sign in info. I wanted to capture that before it goes, but anyway, it's my sign in info before login. Well, I think it's the same. If you don't have, so the user needs to register once the admin, sorry. If you can't get it from here, then just go with my sign in info. Oh, sorry, let's go with the shortcut. HTTPS aka.ms/SSPR setup. This should be the shortcut. SSPR setup. Yeah. So that should be able to allow you to set it up. Once you set your account, you register your account, or you register your mobile phone or your authenticator app, depending on what the admin set as the authentication method for SSPR. You can test it with HTTP. I think I shared that earlier, but I'm going to share it again. SSP before we go, aka.ms/SSPR. So this is how you can test it. This will take you to password reset.microsoftonline.com. All right. All right. I think we should have come to the end of this session for today. We'll continue tomorrow with the next session, which is conditional access, how to configure and manage conditional access policy or conditional access. You should be able to have a tutor for tomorrow for you to do that. Ochechiku, before we round up, do you have a question? Can you unmute yourself and ask?
No, sir, I don't have any questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay, your hand is up, that's why. So any questions before we end it for today?
Haladu, thank you very much for this section. You really made complex things very easy. Thank you. Bye. It was a wonderful
one. All right,
one.
thank you guys. So we'll end the session for now on the recording. You will get the recording. And if you have any question, we have the WhatsApp group. Please drop your questions there if you have any, including screenshot if you have. Thank you very much. And see you in our next session.